Those corn dogs, they might want a refund on that $18 million. Trinidad Chambliss, he's here to stay at this point, and he should be talked about in the Heisman discussion. And Ole Miss, they didn't play well, but they still dominated the LSU Tigers. We will talk all about that on this edition of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast reaction show.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. Ole Miss just took apart LSU tonight. Completely dominated the game. Ole Miss had 14 penalties and 2 turnovers and still dominated nearly every single statistical category. We're going to talk about that. Everybody talked about this is going to be the biggest game and the best defense that Trinidad Chambliss is going to see. Can he match up against them? Well, the answer to that is emphatically yes. I do think Trinidad Chambliss is probably the starting quarterback going forward. You know how I feel about Austin Simmons, but 400 yards a game, 3 straight times. Trinidad played really well, and the interception, hey, not necessarily his fault, kind of a little bit of bad luck, but Ole Miss did a relatively good job of taking care of the ball, trying to be on schedule. Now, the officials, for whatever reason, loved a holding call tonight for whatever, in the 14 penalties, but it didn't matter. The only person that could stop Ole Miss tonight was Ole Miss. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen, and please give us a like, subscribe, and comment. On your way out, check a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college and pro, they're available. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Listen, LSU should be embarrassed. They should. They spent $18 million on that defense, and Lane Kiffin carved them up. Now, I would have liked to see what this defense looked like without the $18 million. That would have probably been a 600-yard night. But as it stands, Lane Kiffin was able to take advantage of that defense, and Ole Miss is firmly in the discussion for the college football playoff now. Ole Miss is exactly where we said Ole Miss was going to be. We said that Ole Miss needed to go 6-0 before the playoff talk can start in earnest. This Ole Miss team is likely going to go 6-0. If you worry about Washington State, they got beat 59-10 by North Texas. If Ole Miss shows up, they're going to win that game. They're going to be 30-point favorites in that game. They're going to win that game. But the next week, Georgia in Athens. The next week, Oklahoma in Norman. And you have a chance to build in a ton of margin for error. And would you vote? Would you think that Ole Miss can't pull off this win? Do you think that Ole Miss could not do it? Is there anybody that says, hey, no chance, we're going to lose that game on the road? This Ole Miss team, at a minimum, is likely going to be favored in every game this season but one. Now, there are other games that you can lose. We saw that last year. And LSU playing a wide receiver at running back was some of the most hilarious callback stuff that a team that was following the Ole Miss model of going all in and spending all that money, playing a wide receiver at running back, and then wondering why they can't run the ball. Pete Golding tonight was elite. Ole Miss's defense tonight was elite. All they did was rush 3 and drop 8. Because they knew that Garrett Nussmeier couldn't beat them. Ole Miss was the better team on the field tonight. I don't know how anybody can watch what happened and not say that Ole Miss is the better team between Ole Miss and LSU. Sure, LSU spent a ton of money in the transfer portal. And all that led was them nearly giving up 500 yards and nearly 30 first downs. And if Ole Miss wouldn't have had 14 penalties and 2 turnovers, they would have blew LSU out. All the LSU fans were in the comment section over the course of the weekend to tell me how stupid I was for thinking that Ole Miss was going to win the game 24-19 or 24-17. 24-19 was the final score of the game. I called that game almost perfectly. I mentioned the fact that pressure would build up on the LSU players in the fourth quarter, and that happened. I mentioned that LSU had to run the ball to threaten Ole Miss, and they couldn't. Even though Ole Miss was only rushing 3 players and playing coverage, LSU still couldn't run the ball. Pete Golding performed exactly like we were told in the preseason that the front 7 would perform. That is a big thing. You saw sacks, you saw pressure, you saw people affecting Garrett Nussmeier with a 3-man rush. Ole Miss was a better team than LSU, period. End of story. And honestly, wasn't particularly close. The only reason the final score was 24-19 is because Ole Miss had a penalty problem tonight. And Ole Miss had a turnover problem with a fumble inside the 5-yard line and an interception that was at least a little bit weird. That allowed LSU to make it closer than it actually was. But if you look at the stats, Ole Miss completely dominated that football game. Honestly, I got to credit Michael Katz about this because he mentioned this on the show Friday night, that this felt like Ole Miss in Georgia. And Lane Kiffin, I mentioned on that show that he had this grin on his face all week of the cat that ate the canary. He knew he was going to take advantage of this $18 million defense. And everybody that was ticked off about me making fun of Penn State and their number 1 defense in college football, this LSU thing is going to be much worse. So if that one bothered you, just get ready. Matt Moscona talking about how LSU was going to keep Ole Miss at arm's length and treat little brother the way they should by saying that LSU, Ole Miss had 0 chance to win that game. Didn't work out. It backfired. The Ole Miss D2 quarterback, as everybody liked to talk about it, D2 quarterback versus an $18 million defense. I heard that all week long. That D2 quarterback beat LSU. He didn't game manage LSU. He didn't do anything. He beat LSU. He is a good player, and he is likely the starter the rest of the season. Listen, please chat. We're going to probably go a little bit longer tonight because honestly, that game was fun. Anytime you get to watch the Corn Dogs run back with their tail between their leg, that is fun. Leave a comment in the section. Producer Becky is on there trying to star some stuff. So if you decide to act up, you're not going to get starred. But she's going to let me know exactly what I need to do. But we are going to celebrate tonight because this game was the announcement of Ole Miss on the national stage that they are a team to be reckoned with. Everybody wondered who the top dog in the SEC would be. Is it going to be Alabama? Is it going to be Georgia? Is it going to be Texas, LSU? No. Right now, it's going to be LSU. No, it's not going to be LSU. It's going to be Ole Miss, and it's going to be Missouri. Those 2 schools are going to have major say in what happens. I said before this season that Ole Miss was the most underrated SEC program out there. Everybody wanted things to go poorly. Missouri's the other one. Alabama's playing much better. Georgia right now is struggling mightily with that. And Mississippi State's much improved, by the way. That Egg Bowl is going to be fun. But Ole Miss completely took apart the big, bad $18 million LSU Tigers on their way to getting that Magnolia Bowl trophy and becoming a major player in national college football. Ole Miss should wake up Sunday with the fact that they'll probably be about 7th nationally. At least they should be. They'll be about 7th. And then you have Washington State. Like I said, they got 50 burgered by North Texas and Washington. I think that Ole Miss, if they play well, they should handle that. It's not me overlooking them. It is just me being honest about the situation. And then you have the Georgia Bulldogs. And then you have the Oklahoma Sooners. The next 3 weeks will determine Ole Miss's playoff tail. So we'll see exactly how it goes. I'm pretty fired up about where we are and how it could be. Anyway, when we come back, we will look at the box score. It's not pretty if you're an LSU fan. If you're an LSU fan and showed up at this chat, thank you for showing up. You said you were going to see me after this. Thank you for doing it. If you didn't show up and you're watching this later and you kind of chickened out, yeah, I have no respect because of all of the talk that you made during the week. Anyway, stick around. You know, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, culture, keep the needle moving, and moving the game forward. This week's moment happens to be Trinidad Chambliss early in the game. LSU's defense was fast. It was something that Trinidad Chambliss had to work around and get used to. And then it was deep shots to Deuce Alexander over and over, almost picking on LSU's cornerbacks that settled him down and honestly settled down the Ole Miss offense. And from that point on, it was a dominating performance by Trinidad and Ole Miss. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected only is the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whatever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it keeps all of this free. If you want more, join the Insiders program in the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. So give that a try as well. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. All right, so let's do a little box score cleanup, and then we will take your comments for a good portion of the third segment. Remember, if you comment on there, put where you're commenting from. I do want to shout that out. We already have well over 100 comments that are chosen for selection, so it may take a little bit of time. So bear with me a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. In this game, Ole Miss dominated this game against LSU and their $18 million defense. I'm going to say that over and over again because it's an $18 million defense. They went all in. They wanted to do what Ole Miss tried to do a year ago, and they thought they could make it work. But here's the catch. This weekend last year, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. A little bit, couple of weeks after that, they lost to LSU. And LSU losing to Alabama, that's probably going to happen coming up as well. They go to Vanderbilt as well, and that's not an easy win. But Ole Miss had 28 first downs to LSU 16, 166 yards rushing to 57 yards for LSU, 314 yards passing for 197 for LSU, for a total of Ole Miss having 480 yards against this $18 million defense and only giving up 254 yards. They had 2 turnovers. LSU had 1. And it wasn't even just that thing. Kewan Lacey didn't rush. He rushed for 4 yards a carry, but he was a weapon in the run game. He was somebody that took some of the pressure off of Trinidad Chambliss, who was able to rush for 71 yards in the game. Logan Diggs had a touchdown. That made me happy. Deshaun Womack, they called him for offsides. He had a sack in the game, and there was a pass defense play by Sage Ryan. I was pretty happy to see that as well. If you look at the passing game, Trinidad Chambliss was 23 of 39 for 314 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Absolutely unstoppable. And if you look at the receiving, Ole Miss had 9 receivers caught the ball over the game. One of the leading tacklers of the game was William Eccles, but that still has to be populated. He played pretty well. Wyatt Williams had an interception. Antonio Kite, basically Ole Miss played well in the pass defense, and that was all that LSU had. That was the only way that LSU could affect you, was throwing the football, and they just couldn't. They weren't good enough. If we're going to be honest, LSU is not good enough. They're not good enough to win 10 games right now, in my opinion. Now, their defense is really good, but they kind of had the same situation that Texas has. I don't think right now they would beat Texas A&M. I do not think right now they would beat Alabama. I'm not 100% sure they're going to go up to Nashville and win the game. Now, the defense is going to play hard, all of that. But at this point, I don't see it. I'm not seeing it because they just got physically dominated by a not $18 million defense. The $18 million defense looked like Ole Miss tonight, not LSU. It wasn't Blake Baker, who was supposed to be all world. I don't think Ole Miss gave up a sack in this game. There was a couple of pressures that happened, but Ole Miss's offensive line handled them pretty well. So we'll see exactly how that goes for Ole Miss. All right. When we come back, we are going to take your comments because that is going to be awesome. So your comments coming up next on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. It is the weekend. It's time to look back at the Ole Miss LSU game that just ended and pick this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more and more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it all down. For Ole Miss, it was Trinidad Chambliss, the D2 quarterback, going against the $18 million defense. Isn't that pretty cool that little Ole Miss was able to pull that off? In that game, he just was a weapon that LSU could not account for. The running quarterback did LSU in again. They had to take a defender out of the 11 to spy him from time to time. And because of that, the defense just wasn't as effective as it could have been. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance was not a fluke. Trinidad Chambliss is actually on a streak right now, 3 straight games. And just like Trinidad Chambliss delivered for the Ole Miss Rebels, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs through 11/18. And caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of our premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Honestly, I love how fast it kicks in and that it is sugar-free. I don't have time to worry about crashing out a little later. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. Time to give you your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Go to get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com, or at Amazon today. All right, so let's go into your comments. Remember, if you're commenting right now, please put where you are commenting from. I want to shout that out, and I appreciate you being here. All 300 that's on the stream at the moment. Listen, Javon Campbell says, I'm going to be nosy and listen in on the Locked On LSU podcast and check in on these guys. They were pretty confident about LSU winning. You know, the real thing about this that's kind of funny, the only people that were really confident about LSU winning this game were in Louisiana. Everybody outside, they weren't. But the people in Louisiana was acting like Ole Miss was playing the 85 Bears. And the Rebels took them apart. They absolutely took them apart. Alabama just scored another touchdown to go 14-0, by the way. Isaac Kessler from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, put Trinidad on the Heisman watch list now. Tough for Simmons, but the best player needs to play. GTH LSU, you're absolutely right there. It's at the point where he had nearly 400 yards of total offense against the supposed best defense that he's going to see all year. If he can do that against LSU, he can do it against Oklahoma, he can do it against Georgia. It's kind of exactly what you're looking for. One of those players that just kind of appear like Hendon Hooker did a couple of years ago with Tennessee. I think Ole Miss found theirs, honestly. And like I said, the 3rd and 18 that he picked up, throwing the ball in between like linebackers in a tiny window with a perfect throw, was a Heisman throw. It was big time. You expect number 18 on the other side to make a throw like that, although he couldn't tonight, but not Trinidad Chambliss, a D2 quarterback from Ferris State, but he did. And each and every time he goes on the field, it gets a little bit better. So I'm pretty excited about that as well. Pretty fired up, if we're going to be honest. Stanley Cannon, Trinidad Chambliss for Heisman. He's our starter moving forward. The guy's special. He's in Dallas, Texas, by way of West Point, Mississippi. Trinidad Chambliss, I'm telling you, he's a weapon at quarterback, and as long as Ole Miss doesn't turn the ball over, they're pretty tough. The fact that, listen, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Ole Miss at this point would be 5-0, including a win over the number 4 LSU Tigers, with 3 games being with a backup quarterback, I would have asked you what you were smoking, honestly. But that's exactly what happened. Spectre Studios says, hotty toddy from Iuka, Mississippi. Can't wait to see the polls next week. Also proud of Tennessee for beating MU. Yeah, and I am proud that Mississippi State covered because I picked Mississippi State in that game. Mark Walsh, quarterback controversy is over. LFG, yeah, now the weirdness begins. Ole Miss during the bye week, they're going to probably play the weird name. Walter Blakeney says, hell yeah, bro. Mitch from Laurel, Mississippi. And Joel Nichols is checking in from Tupelo, Mississippi. And Robert Viether is from Litchfield Park, Arizona. Great win. It's pretty awesome to see what happened. Joel Nichols says Trinidad for Heisman. I actually been joking around like the Georgia host for Locked On Georgia, because I went into the group chat on Locked On and was talking about how Ole Miss dominated this game, which they did. If Ole Miss wouldn't have had 14 penalties and wouldn't have beat themselves, they would have won this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They just would have. They were the better team in this game. And the fact that that is, it wasn't even with as much as Ole Miss self-sabotaged. But when I was in there, I was pointing out to the Locked On Bulldogs host, which not the Mississippi State, the Georgia Bulldogs, that Ole Miss dominating the game. And he's like, you have different definitions of domination than I do. And I'm like, have you looked at the box score of this game? The worst enemy tonight was not the LSU Tigers. It was the Ole Miss Rebels. If Ole Miss would have played a clean game, this game would have looked really similar to the way the Tulane game looked. And that's interesting. That felt pretty good to think of, honestly, if we're going to be real about it. Reb1 says, what will Ole Miss be ranked tomorrow? I'm thinking 7th. Should be 7th. If anybody watched the game, it'll be 7th. Brendan Nettles says, great win, hotty toddy from Dallas, Texas. Rex Thompson's from Oliver Springs, Tennessee. Happy for the win. Rebels need to clean up the penalties. Yeah, it was the most unclean game of the season. It is probably the second worst offensive performance that Ole Miss has had this season, with the worst being the Kentucky Wildcats game, if we're going to be honest. Robert Dern, your buddy from Locked On LSU, was so confident they were winning. Yeah, he was real confident. Like I said, the only people that were confident that LSU was going to win that game were people from Louisiana. Everybody else was on Ole Miss. Roadrunner 26, the game shouldn't even have been that close. LSU got lucky. They didn't get totally embarrassed. Absolutely. Jared Parker, I think it's time to name Chambliss the starter. I don't think you need to name him at all. I just, everybody's seen it. 400 yards, 3 straight games. Kind of hard to look at that. BC says, dominated. Score should have been way worse. LSU is overrated like every single year. And their $18 million defense. James York, hell of a win. Damn proud of my Rebs from Vicksburg, Mississippi. Yes, that's awesome. If you see my mom, if you see Keith, tell them hi. Celebrate with them. Rebel and Dave Adventures. Let's go, boys. Jared Parker, also the self-inflicting wounds made this game a lot closer than it should have been. Ole Miss just absolutely dominate this game. This period. This is the second time they've done that, by the way. The last time they played somebody this highly ranked, Ole Miss did it to Georgia. And now they do it to LSU. This is not the big game Lane jokes that everybody makes, because there's starting to be a track record of Ole Miss handling it. And there's a touchdown by Georgia. It should be 14-7 after this. That crew always calls holding. Yes. Mike Biggs from Norman, Oklahoma. Ole Miss could have easily scored 2 more touchdowns. Despite the score, this game wasn't close. No chance. Ha, 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 ha. Yes, exactly. Reverend Hugh says having an $18 million defense and losing to a D2 quarterback is embarrassing. I wonder who Brian Kelly is going to call spoiled this week. Probably everybody, because they were writing checks that they had no business writing, if we're going to be real about it. Was that the 4th best team that you've seen this year? No, they weren't particularly good. Especially not offensively. Defensively, you could see there's some talent there, but still, Lane Kiffin took advantage of them. Took them apart. Asher Sachs says, Asher from Kansas City, our defense bailed us out when we needed it, and our offense made the plays when it needed it. It was just enough. I'll take it. 3-0 in the SEC. Ole Miss is firmly in the playoff discussion moving forward. Period. They are. And I also like the way that on that 4th down at the end, I agree. I know that I talk about analytics. That wasn't an analytic play at the end of the game. That was a close out the game play. That was Lane Kiffin knowing on short yardage that out routes to the tight end or to Caden Lee, you could get those easy openings with formation and by leveraging the defense and taking advantage of that. And that's the reason they did that. Excellent call to do that and was able to put it through. Stanley Cannon says Ole Miss will be ranked top 5 or 6 tomorrow. We rolled over the best defense in the country. Hotty toddy. Rebel and Dave Adventures, DB, they're all crying now. Where are all the fake Ole Miss fans at too? I'm an Ole Miss fan, but LSU will beat us. I saw so many fake Rebels posting this past week. Yeah, it was stupid. It was stupid. LSU was not good. They're supposed to be good. They have a ton of potential. They spent $18 million in the transfer portal. They're not very good. Cash the Real Saint says, when didn't play good in the second half, we had way too many penalties and some were questionable, but it is what it is. Imagine if we would have played clean versus Georgia. If we played clean versus Georgia and Oklahoma. If Ole Miss plays clean, you can't stop this offense. You can't. This is a playoff team, and defensively, it's starting to come around. If you look, Ole Miss rushed a 3-man rush against Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback that took them apart last year. And not only were they affecting the quarterback, they were getting to the quarterback. William Eccles is going to be a really good player for Ole Miss by the time he's done. I'm pretty excited about his development right now. TTK Trace from Senatobia, Mississippi. What a game. We absolutely dominated them, and the score should have been a lot worse. It should have, but it wasn't. We got the win, so we'll see what's up. Jeffrey Langley says, Aiken, South Carolina, proud of these Rebels. Everybody should be. And Sean Neeson says, where the LSU talkers at? They were all on why Ole Miss wins, now crickets. It's funny. I even put a tweet out that all the LSU fans that promised to be here after the game, they needed to show up after the game, and there's nobody here. None. Crickets. Nothing. Yeah. Kind of is what it is. Keezer Jones, Oxford, Mississippi. I hate to say it, but I think we found our quarterback. I think we did too, honestly. Jeff Lanham, glorious. Chase Wheeler, dude, even though we won, the damn penalties made me want to pull my dang hair out. True. But to think about this, Ole Miss kind of held LSU at arm's length, like a little brother, if we're going to be honest, even with all of those penalties and turnovers, even with playing one of the worst offensive games that they have this year. Ole Miss was able to put her hand on the forehead, and LSU couldn't do anything. Just is what it is. $18 million defense. They probably want a refund. That one guy, LSU, and the refs in shambles, right? Tyler Leslie defense was on fire from start to finish. They were fantastic. Mick says D2 quarterback is greater than an $18 million defense. Print it. Exactly. Brian Kelly did say the better team would win in the second half. Yeah, he was right about that. The better team was the better team in the first half as well. LSU is not as good as Ole Miss. That is what we saw in the game. They were not physical enough with Ole Miss. They couldn't stop Ole Miss's offense. It was ridiculous. They were not as good as Ole Miss. And every LSU fan has to come to terms with the fact that no, $18 million later, you're still not as good as Ole Miss. Just is what it is. Reverend Hugh says, Pete Golding and Charlie Weiss Jr. both deserve their flowers. They had a fantastic game. Ever since Trinidad Chambliss has taken over, Charlie Weiss has put together some majorly awesome game plans. Should be pretty interesting. This is the complete opposite of last year. LSU had all the talent and the money and the transfer portal and still lost. Deja vu anyway. The difference is in that game in Baton Rouge, LSU didn't lead until the final play of the game. In this game, LSU got taken apart from the second quarter on. Did take a quarter for Ole Miss to get ready. They were self-sabotaging pretty bad. Michael Williams, LSU ain't a top 10 team. Not anymore, definitely. Walter Blakely, you're my man. Been watching you all year. Thank you so much, Walter. Fantastic. Mike Biggs says you almost called this score perfectly, Stephen. And it's Steven, by the way, just pointing that out. But yes, I did call that pretty dang well perfectly. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the prediction. And if you want proof of that, honestly, there's what I called. That was my prediction. But yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for pointing that out, because it's always important to point out when I'm awesome. Santaran Perkins was a stud today. Mac Bowman says that, and he was. Did Ole Miss have a penalty problem or refs asleep? Probably yes, both, honestly. They were grabby a bit. Ole Miss will fix it. It'll be fine. But in this game, it wasn't enough to beat you. And you don't want it to beat you at any point, but this is one of those games that it's supposed to be beating you. Thank you. I watched that episode where you and him were talking, and he said that to you. I honestly was like, WTF, Big Brother with his hand out? Right. And the funny thing is, in the game, Ole Miss was the big brother with the handout. They just were. BC says it ended at 5. It was about to be 12 when the tight end sat down to run out the clock. No fluke TD for LSU and no fumble from a wide receiver. That's 14 more. Let's see. Jacob Walters says, you've grown on me, bud. You deserve it. Good work, buddy. Thank you, Jacob. Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm an acquired taste. I am, because I don't do it like everybody else. Because if I did it like everybody else, there's no reason to watch me. I do it my specific way. And that grates on some people from time to time. And I understand that. But if people listen to me over and over and don't just read the titles or look at the thumbnail pictures and those titles, they will see that there's more analysis in there than not. And it's weird, but thank you very much for tuning in. Luke Shaw says that was an amazing game. Most games are between Ole Miss and LSU lately have been amazing in Oxford. And next year, LSU gets to come back to Oxford. So we get to do all of this again. Ronnie Turner says, Brian Kelly, ego versus Lane's team. Lane coached circles around Brian Kelly tonight. Listen, Trinidad ran out of bounds, okay? You get that. That was a mistake. But when Ole Miss ran the ball that was tackled at 2 minutes and 7 seconds, why not use the timeout then and force them to run another play so after third down you could save a little bit of time? Now, it worked out because Trinidad ran out of bounds, but it was weird. It was weird. Gail Hanna says it's a good day to be a Rebel. It absolutely is. And Jacob Walter says Alabama and Georgia are irrelevant. Yeah. All that is margin for error potentially for Ole Miss. That's crazy to think of, but that's the way we sit. Kentucky right now is down 21-10. They were doing pretty well, but now they're down 21-10. Roadrunner says Brian Kelly with first-round talent. Just beat your ass with a D2 quarterback because Lane can actually coach. Yes. Fate says we're still not going to be ranked in the top 10. Watch it. We should be, but the AP, yeah, we will be ranked in the coaches poll because it was like they're 11th in the coaches poll. They're going to be 7th or 6th or something like that because LSU is going to tumble a little bit. Edward Green says, I've said all summer Ole Miss was going to be a powerhouse. Robert Veether says, is Trinidad in the Heisman running? Yeah, I think so at this point, honestly. We'll see whenever they go to Athens. That's a chance for a Heisman moment from time to time. So we'll be able to see how that goes. Mike Biggs says, if Mateer doesn't play at Oklahoma when we go up there, we have a better chance to go undefeated in the regular season. If they go undefeated, my goodness, that's absolutely nuts to think about what can happen. But right now, Ole Miss is firmly in the playoff discussion. So they are firmly in the playoff discussion. Mason Palazzolo says LSU fans made fun of Ole Miss's quarterback as a D2 player, and now he beat them and their $18 million roster. Should be pretty good. Let's see. Outside of the first quarter, it was great. Yeah, it did take time for the D2 quarterback to get the speed of the game together. He struggled the first couple of series. Once they figured that out, they were able to scheme up some stuff, and he threw some darts again. It was amazing. All right, before we get out of here today, let's take a few more questions. Luke Shaw says, we just did what we did. We ran the ball, we set up the pass, and we played gritty defense to win the game. We overcame adversity by being mentally tough, and that's what it takes to win a national championship. All right, so Luke is drinking the Kool-Aid fully at this point. I think I'm with you, honestly, but we'll see. And BC says, LOL, 18 million gets you front row tickets to TV and living room to watch the playoffs. Yeah. Jim Crawford says, I'm waiting on to see what SEC Mike says about this game. Whatever is controversial, that's what he does. Alan Hawkins says, the Rebels impressed me tonight. They're better than I thought. The defense finally showed up. Chambliss has ice water in his veins, and Kiffin is still the gambler. Wasn't a gamble. Everybody knows how I feel about analytics. Everybody knows that. That was not a gamble. He knew LSU's defense and how to take advantage of it. And that's the reason on all of those short yardage, they just found different ways to do the same thing because they knew it would be wide open. There is a hole in LSU's defense with the play that Daquan Wright got the fourth down at the end and what Caden Lee got the touchdown on. So that's what's going on. All right, we have a new member, JC. Thank you very much. LSU never came close to sacking Chambliss. So proud of our O-line. Yeah, I'm sure Todd Wade would be very proud of that as well. Listen, we got a bye week coming up this week. We have a chance to get even healthier. After this game, you probably need it. Then you have the Washington State game to kind of fit what's going on. So we'll see exactly what happens. David says they said that LSU's offense was ready to go off on the Rebels. What? Yeah, seriously, they were not very good. 250 total yards. The Rebels kind of took them apart. So thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. And another big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation. A long-time two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. I was on this week, actually. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Howdy tidy, everybody. Remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. Tomorrow is the SEC Squad Overreaction Show. And if you want to see me at my absolute smugness, you definitely want to tune in for that live stream and comment all over the place because I am going to be so smug. Anyway, take care. We'll see you later.